When I first heard about Vampire the Masquerade, Coteries of New York, I was actually pretty excited because it's been so long since we've had a Vampire the Masquerade game. And it's a universe I'm really interested in learning more about, and I think it really lends itself well to video games. I regard Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines as being one of the best RPGs ever made. It has a lot of problems with it, but just in terms of the sheer variety of the gameplay, how good the writing and the dialogue is, it's absolutely amazing. Although, as with a lot of cult hits, most something like Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, it really isn't for everyone. Bloodlines that hit. But we're talking about Coteries of New York. So it's a visual novel, and I was kind of excited about it. But when I looked up the reviews, they said it was good but very short. Also, there's only one ending, despite there being choices in the game. Okay, sorry, there's one bad ending that happens really early on, but it's super obvious. But there's only one ending. Your decisions don't matter. Like, part of it is building up your coterie and getting your group together, and it's completely irrelevant who you get in your group. And I was like, it sounds interesting, but I'm gonna wait until it goes on sale to get it. And a little while ago, there was a sale on Switch games on the Nintendo store, and I think it was like 50% off. So it was actually pretty reasonable. So I said, I'll go ahead and get it. I'm interested in Vampire the Masquerade. I think a visual novel is a pretty good idea for how to deal with it. So I got Coteries of New York, and it was a mixed bag. I need to do a sci-fi pulsi on the Sabbat, Camarilla, and Anarchs at some point, but that's for another time. So the game starts off, and you can pick one of three backgrounds. You can be a Ventru, which is um, the aristocratic vampire lineage. Okay, or maybe just take a step back. So in Vampire the Masquerade, there's a number of different clans or bloodlines, all of which function as something like an extended family, and they all have different powers and they all have different kind of archetypes to them. Like the Ventru are aristocratic, their powers focus around influencing and controlling people. There's the Bruja who focus more on combat and they're more kind of free wild spirits. And then there's the Toreador, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, who are the vampires who are extremely artistic and sensitive and are the most kind of likely to try to hold on to their humanity on. So you can play as a Troubadour, a Ventru, or a Bruja. And my understanding is it's not super different between them. They have different disciplines or different powers that you can use during combat. But as there's only one ending, it doesn't super matter whether you use them or not. I guess it just gives you slightly different content. Using your powers uses up blood, though, so you don't want to use them too often. There are a number of opportunities throughout the game to feed. If you add it up, you can probably use your powers in every case where it gives you the option, and there's enough blood that you'll be able to go and still be able to survive. So the game starts off with you being turned into a vampire by some nefarious, unknown person. And this brings us to the Camarilla. So I'll just give maybe a brief definition of the Camarilla. So the Camarilla is basically the vampire government. I mean, there's three major factions: the Anarch, the Sabbat, and the Camarilla. The Camarilla were founded in response to the Inquisition and by increasing technology of normal humans, because it made it more and more that they didn't have as much of an advantage as they used to. And you can see this in all kinds of different vampire stuff, like silver bullets, flamethrowers, that kind of thing. And they kind of came to the conclusion that they have to take everything underground. And that's what the Masquerade is. The Masquerade is when most vampires came to an agreement, at least the Camarilla and eventually the Anarchs, that they would avoid using their powers in public, that they would avoid anything that could compromise and let mortals know that vampires exist. So they're allowed to feed in public, they're allowed to use their disciplines, they just can't get caught. Normally, when you drink someone's blood, it makes them have a memory blackout, which is very convenient. So that kind of limits it somewhat. But that's kind of one of the major things. There's a bunch of traditions that the Camarilla enforces. Each city or province is governed by a prince. I'm not sure exactly how the princes are chosen, but they kind of have a court around them, including a sheriff who's normally one of the strongest vampires whose job is to mete out justice. But their goal is to basically provide some structure, some order to vampire society, prevent constant turf wars and just people going nuts and killing each other, the kind of stuff that the Sabbat does. And one of the traditions is you cannot turn someone into a vampire within a city or a prince's territory without their express permission. Obviously, there's a good chance of that violating the masquerade. If someone just goes missing or they show up again and they're a vampire, that's obviously bad. So, because you were turned and your sire is not around, the prince decides that they're going to destroy you. Because normally they would destroy both you and your master. In Bloodlines, you also get turned by, I think, an unknown vampire, but only your sire is destroyed and you're allowed to go. This takes place in, I think, the 5th edition, which is different from Bloodlines, which was an older edition. They keep releasing new supplements that rewrite aspects of the plot. But before you get killed, a older vampire named Sophia, or rather Sophie, decides to intervene and take you under her wing, and you become bound to her, and you're basically her servant, and she's responsible for teaching you the traditions, teaching you how to be a vampire, and in return you kind of become her serving girl. So there's kind of this background plot going over where Sophie's preparing some sort of coup or some sort of op in the background, and she suggests to you that you start a coterie. So you get a bunch of other vampires together in kind of a circle to help each other out. While the Camarilla on the surface is a lot more, I guess you could say, sophisticated and less violent and more civilized looking than the other vampire fact. There's a lot of backstabbing and assassination and people trying to overthrow other people. So, like, coups are common, manipulating other people is common, that sort of thing. And Sophie's obviously planning something. So, what you need, generally speaking, is people with connections, hopefully, people from a different clan. And you're given four possible companions that you can recruit to be part of your coterie. And I think how it works out is it's really weird because there's like a time system. It's almost like a social sim. So, like every night, you have time for 2 actions, depending on whether or not Sophie has a task for you. And I think once you recruit 2 people, that's when the game progresses. Or I'm not sure if it just progresses if you don't recruit people and you run out of time. I wasn't really sure because I was able to do it in time. But the recruitment is pretty interesting. The 2 that I wound up doing were Agathon and Tamika, or Tamika. I'm not sure how you pronounce it exactly because this game isn't voiced. But I wound up recruiting them. Agathon is a Tremere. I'm not sure how you pronounce it once again, but they're probably my favorite clan in Vampire the Masquerade. They're the most organized, insular, and I guess you could say disciplined and loyal to each other. They're very skilled in blood magic and sorcery and runes like that, runes such as that. So they're exceedingly scholarly. They tend to all live together in one place in whatever city they're in. They're one of the pillars of the Camarilla, but everyone else is kind of afraid of them because they're a sect within a sect. So you go to Agathon, and he's kind of a massive spurg, and he has a mission where you're trying to help his ex-girlfriend or something. He's trying to get notes back, that sort of thing. And his story's not bad. Um, I enjoyed it mainly for his autism, just because he's extremely like introverted and big on research and writing and studying blood magic and that kind of thing. So I did enjoy his quest line quite a bit. It probably could have been a bit better. And then there's the Mikas, which is she's a gangrel, which is a sect that a clan that used to be part of the Camarilla but left, and they're more animalistic. And I think one of their disciplines is transforming into a wolf. And she kind of looks a bit like a barbarian or like some wild person, but she's actually probably the most honest and kind of genuinely good person, I'd say, within the context of this game. So I liked both of them quite a bit. And then we kind of get into the actual plot of the game, which revolves around the Baron of New York, Callahan. So, from my understanding, in the previous edition, the Anarchs were part of the Camarilla. They were a political movement that the Camarilla considered part of them, and their status was ambiguous. And now they're just a completely different faction. So the Anarchs, as the name suggests, are kind of the libertarians of the vampire world, where they're more big on not having structure, not having the same degree of control, just providing the maximum amount of freedom. They do still have a government, which is they have a baron who's the head of their territory, which is exactly the same thing as a prince that is a member of the Anarch movement. And they can range from being very laissez-faire to Boss Callahan, who's the person having this, who's exceedingly tyrannical. I guess one of the big differences is there's no kind of central government. I'm not sure. It's a bit ambiguous how strong the Camarilla's central government is, but I think they do have people they can send to kill princes or other vampires who break the masquerade. The Anarchs do hold to the masquerade. I don't think they hold to the other traditions, though. But that's there's kind of a long history of warfare between them and the Sabbat. I'm not really going to go into detail about the Sabbat because they aren't really relevant in this particular game, which is too bad because I like the Sabbat quite a bit. So this brings us to Boss Callahan, who's the Baron of New York, who comes from I think the Victorian era or a bit before. And he's a complete piece of shit, but he's also super base. Like he complains about minorities, he's very patriarchal. And obviously they put that in the game because the people who make this are like massive shit libs. And they think that makes him more equal and less sympathetic, but to me it makes him more sympathetic, obviously. So the plan that Sophie's running is that she's working with another local anarch, and they're going to overthrow the prince and the baron, and she's going to become the new prince, and he's going to become the new baron, because it turns out that the prince of the city and Callahan are bloodbound to each other, and they're secretly working together, which is not permitted, I think. And they're doing illegal stuff that violates the tradition. And this is kind of where the whole game falls apart. And this is kind of ultimately what I really want to talk about. I think in horror, the hardest thing to do is to write the end. That's my problem. A lot of creepypastas have really, really bad endings where something like really like it's not supernatural until the ending, or it's very tonally different and then something crazy happens at the end and they have to like as I've said many times, no explanation is better than a horrible explanation. I kind of wish more creepypasta people would at the end just make it ambiguous. Like there was this one story I read the other day called The Body Farm, and like apparently the big reveal at the end is halfway through the narrator switched to some other dude. There wasn't really any indication of this. Maybe there were a couple hints, but it was just really unnecessary, and it just kind of was like, why did they even put this? And then like it wasn't supernatural. It was like sci-fi-ish, but then they just added like random supernatural elements in it, and it was just very disconcerting. I think that's a problem with this game. Is sure the world of world. It's literally called the World of Darkness or Vampire the Masquerade. It's supposed to be dark, and everybody's supposed to kind of be a piece of shit. It's a grim, dark world. But there's another problem. The other problem with horror, other than having bad, crazy endings, and this game kind of has that, although it kind of makes sense, is you have to just have a really negative ending, even if it doesn't make sense. Like there's a lot of horror movies where the protagonist goes through a character arc or they go through a redemption arc, and then they just randomly die at the end of the movie. And it's just like it kind of ruins the thematic thing that you're going for. It's kind of a cliche in and of itself that you have to have the main character die, or like they defeat the evil but then the evil comes back because we need to make a sequel or something, and they can't just end the character arc there. They can't have a satisfying end. And this game's a lot like that. It's like the ending doesn't really make a lot of sense because you catch the prince and Callahan, and this guy who's periodically shown up throughout the game is like, I'm actually an elder, and this whole thing was a 24-hour op that I was running, and I wanted to destabilize the city and then restabilize it for my own amusement. It's like, I get that's part of it. There's a thing called jihad. I'm not sure if it's pronounced. It's spelt like jihad, but with a Y. So I'm not sure if it's pronounced jihad or jihad or whatever. In which the vampire elders play really weird games with each other behind the scenes. So I think this is part of that. But he's like, I did this whole thing for my own amusement, and I was an op, and I just did this to troll you. And then he kills Sophie and he makes himself, and then he's like, okay, we're just going to restore the status quo. However, with the fledgling, he's like, I'm impressed by your resourcefulness, even though I don't think you really did anything resourceful. Actually, I completely forgot. There's like a part near the end where you get like kidnapped or something, and then the people you made friends with show up. They don't actually help you during the actual ending. It doesn't matter who you form a partnership with. They literally just show up and do basically nothing, and then so it makes most of the game completely pointless. So this like elder vampire shows up and he kills Sophie and he's like, "You're gonna be my assistant now," and it's just really lame. Like I don't think it was really showcased. I don't think there would have been anything wrong if Sophie's plan had succeeded. I think it would have made more sense within the context. Okay, sure, it might have been a happier ending, and that's not what they go for in Vampire the Masquerade. But like they build Sophie up to be on the whole like a fairly person as far as vampires go. And I don't know, it's just like, do we really need to just pull do an asshole at the last minute? This had like a depressing, unsatisfying ending. And I kind of contrast this with the original Bloodline, where there was like 6 or 7 endings. There might have been more. The game had a lot of issues, a lot of like cut content, and some of the endings turn out good, and some of the endings turn out bad. But it makes sense within it because the main plot of Bloodlines, among other things, is that there's a coffin of an ancient. I don't think he's an antediluvian, or he might be a Methuselan. But there's a coffin of an ancient vampire, and supposedly whoever has it, they get like super powerful and they become godlike. So the whole game is fighting over who gets to control it. And at the end, the prince of the city winds up getting it. And then you're kind of faced with a choice. And if you take kind of the easy way out, either you take the coffin for yourself or you work with the prince to open it. It turns out that the coffin's full of explosives and it kills you. However, if you choose to side with the Camarilla and give it up to them on the grounds that it's too dangerous to be left out in the open, that works out. Or you can just walk out on your own. And that's where I got a line from in No Chance, actually, where it's the to walk the path of pariahs and legends. and that's also a happy ending because you get away. But those make sense within the context of the story, and you at least have a choice. Here it's just a grim dark ending. It's kind of a big fuck you to the planet. It's like, oh, your choices matter, except they don't matter, and the ending's the same regardless. Because this is Vampire the Masquerade, and we want to have a grim dark universe. And it's just lame. So overall, I'd say it's not bad. If you're really into horror games or visual novels or Vampire the Masquerade in general, I'd probably recommend it. Definitely get it on sale though. It's not particularly long. I'm playing through the second one at the moment, which I don't think is as good. Mainly because the main character is really obnoxious. Like, kind of like a shitlib ex-journalist. And I find her really obnoxious and unsympathetic. Maybe before I close, just talking about one other thing that's I'm kind of surprised they put in. So there's one vampire who's one of the fledglings Sophie created in the past, and he is a vampire who converted to Catholicism bizarrely, and he thinks that vampires still have a role in God's plan, and that they should actively seek redemption. And there's a priest who's aware of vampires, and you can go see him. And it's kind of interesting because holy items do hurt vampires in this universe. However, it's kind of weird. It's kind of comforting to you, and it kind of eases on death. Within Vampire the Masquerade, there's called paths of enlightenment. So vampires either follow humanity, in which they try to maintain their human morals and emotions as best they could in their human lives as a way of staving off the beast and not giving into it and just killing and eating everything. Then there's passive enlightenment, where they try to build a completely different morality, and a couple of them have to do with religion. Interestingly, there's like an Islamic one where you only drink from Muslims and you serve Allah. And then there's, I think, a Christian one and stuff like that, like the path of redemption. And he seems to kind of be going down that. So there's kind of some interesting dialogue there. I don't think it ever really gets resolved, but I do like that that was put in, and that the Catholic Church was portrayed rather sympathetically. So overall, it's not a bad game, um, but I don't think I could really recommend. If you're looking for something vampire or World of Darkness related, I'd really recommend going and playing Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I will warn you though, it's dated, buggy, and you have to install mods to get it to work. And it's just kind of really weird in general. But if you can kind of sit through it, it's one of the most rewarding and fascinating RPGs ever made. It's very unique, and I think they do a very good job of bringing the lore to life and putting in a bunch of different stuff without it becoming overly bloated and confused. So that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. God bless, and I'll talk to you all later.